Sometimes it's not the lights that reveal you, it's the silence after the applause fades. That was the quote on the wall behind the community center stage, one of those old-school, red brick buildings tucked between the broken rhythm of traffic and the heartbeat of a city that refused to be forgotten. On that evening, the place was buzzing. Not from celebrities or flashing cameras, but from something rarer, expectation. The kind that creeps into your chest and makes you sit up straighter without realizing. Elon Musk was scheduled to speak. Yes, that Elon Musk, the billionaire, the Mars dreamer, the internet provocateur, the man whose tweets could shift markets and whose silence could unsettle nations. And here he was, stepping into a modest venue with folding chairs, chipped coffee tables, and a ceiling fan that squeaked every fourth rotation. It wasn't a TED stage. It wasn't a SpaceX launch. It was a room that smelled like old paper, hope, and burnt coffee. And she was there too, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, seated 3 rows from the front, hands resting calmly on her lap, eyes observing with a kind of stillness that could make even the most powerful man hesitate. Evelyn didn't come here for the spectacle. She came because her students kept asking her, "Miss Carter, do people like Elon Musk even know what it's like here?" She never had an answer. Maybe tonight she would. Elon took the stage like he always did, with confident steps, a tailored black suit, and that half-smirk that was somehow both charming and defensive. He began with familiar lines. "We're on the brink of something historic. Between AI, space exploration, and renewable energy, we're building the next phase of human evolution." The crowd applauded. Some cheered. Others, like Evelyn, remained quiet. But this wasn't a tech convention. This wasn't Silicon Valley. This was the south side of Atlanta, where rent had doubled in 5 years and public schools lost funding every election cycle. So when the moderator opened the floor for questions, the energy in the room changed. First, there were the easy ones. A teenager asked about becoming an engineer. A woman asked when Tesla would build a plant nearby. Elon answered, his tone polished, almost automatic. Then, the mic made its way to Evelyn. She didn't stand right away. She adjusted her glasses, then rose with the same care she used when teaching second graders how to hold a pencil for the first time. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice steady but warm, "you speak a lot about the future. But I've lived through 7 presidents and too many promises. My question is simple." She paused, letting the silence settle. "How do we trust that your future includes us, when so many like you have forgotten where they came from?" The room went still. No gasp. No murmur. Just still. Elon tilted his head, that smirk softening, not disappearing, but shifting. For a moment, it looked like he might deflect. Joke. Say something clever. But he didn't. He cleared his throat. "I'm trying to build systems that help everyone." Evelyn cut in gently. Not rude. Not loud. Just precise. Intent doesn't equal impact, sir. You're building rockets to Mars while some of us are still fighting for working water fountains. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They just listened. Because this wasn't a soundbite. It was a mirror. And Elon, for once, didn't look prepared. Backstage, his team shifted nervously. This wasn't supposed to be hostile. This was supposed to be good press. A billionaire walking into a community space to show he cared. And maybe he did. But now, he was being asked to prove it without PowerPoint slides, without investor decks, just his presence. He took a breath. "You're right," he said quietly. "You're right that I don't fully understand. I grew up in a different world. But I do believe we're at a point in history where innovation can bridge gaps." Evelyn nodded, but didn't smile. "Innovation without inclusion," she replied, "is just ambition in disguise." And there it was. A sentence so soft, it landed like thunder. Elon sat down after the event, alone for a moment in a side room. He stared at his hands. They'd designed rockets. They'd launched cars into orbit. But tonight, they felt human again. His security detail waited nearby, murmuring about logistics. But Elon wasn't hearing any of it. Because for the first time in a long time, someone had spoken to the part of him that wasn't calculating. The part that was still a boy with a book in South Africa, dreaming not of profits, but possibilities. Mrs. Carter didn't linger for photos. She stepped outside, the Georgia night air brushing against her cheeks. She'd said what needed to be said. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even disappointed. She was simply honest. And that honesty had cracked something open. In Elon. In the room. And maybe, just maybe, in the world. Elon couldn't sleep that night. For a man used to rocket trajectories and algorithm matrices, insomnia wasn't unusual. But this time, it wasn't because of a launch window or a quarterly report. It was because of her voice. Innovation without inclusion is just ambition in disguise. He kept hearing it, soft, firm, unshaken. He had faced senators. He had stared down investors who bet against him. But something about Mrs. Carter's gaze had unsettled him more than any courtroom or shareholder meeting ever could. It wasn't because she was angry. It was because she wasn't. She was calm. And that calm had disarmed every layer of defense he didn't even know he'd built. The next morning, Elon stood by the hotel window, watching Atlanta wake up. Below him, life moved, buses chugged through intersections, kids in uniforms walked to school, and street vendors set up in corners most billionaires never visited. He turned to his assistant. "Can we find her?" "Find who?" she asked, half distracted with her tablet. "Elena Carter. Evelyn. From last night." There was a pause. The kind of pause that happened when someone wasn't used to you caring about names. "I'll check," she said. It took a few days. Turns out, Evelyn Carter wasn't famous. No Instagram blue check, no LinkedIn articles, no TED Talks. But her impact, that was all over the city. She ran a literacy program for single mothers. Taught night classes at a community college. Volunteered at the food bank on Saturdays. And during the pandemic, she was the one delivering tablets door to door so kids could learn online. No fanfare. Just grit and grace. When Elon arrived at the community center again, this time without cameras, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Nervous. He walked through the front doors, no security, just a ball cap and hoodie. A teenage girl at the front desk didn't even recognize him. She pointed toward the library. "She's with the seniors today." "Book circle." "Book circle," he repeated. She smiled. "Yeah. Thursday mornings. Toni Morrison this week." "You know her?" He didn't. But he nodded anyway. The library smelled like lemon oil and old wisdom. The kind of room where time didn't hurry. There, in a circle of 7 folding chairs, sat Evelyn Carter, reading glasses perched at the edge of her nose, her voice soft but deliberate. Freeing yourself was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self was another. She looked up as Elon entered. No shock. No fanfare. Just a quiet smile. The kind that said, "I wondered if you'd come." They spoke afterward, sitting near the window, while the other women filtered out with gentle goodbyes and knowing glances. "I owe you an apology," Elon said. "For what?" she asked, folding her reading glasses slowly. "For showing up late to a lesson I should have learned a long time ago." Evelyn chuckled softly. "Mr. Musk, people arrive when they're ready. Some never do. But you showed up today. Without a mic. Without a podium." He looked down, almost embarrassed. "I used to think my job was to create the future." "And now?" she asked, sipping tea. "Now I'm wondering if I've been building escape pods instead of bridges." Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes locking on his. "That," she said gently, "is the beginning of leadership." They spoke for over an hour. Not about Mars. Not about Tesla. But about kids who had never left their zip code. about systemic barriers that no amount of Wi-Fi could solve, about the difference between access and belonging. And slowly, Elon's shoulders softened. His voice lowered. He wasn't pitching. He wasn't proving. He was listening. On his way out, he paused in the hallway, staring at a mural. It showed a young black girl reaching for the stars, not with a rocket, but with a book. A small plaque beneath it read, "Dreams grow where roots are watered." He stood there longer than he needed to. And in that moment, something shifted. Not a rebrand. Not a headline. But something inside. That evening, his team received a different kind of directive. No press releases. No launch event. Just a quiet request from Elon. Find out what she needs. Not what we think she needs. What she says. And for once, a billionaire's next big move wasn't to disrupt, but to support. Elon Musk wasn't known for staying quiet. But for the first time in years, his silence was intentional. No tweet storms. No press conference. No bold announcements from a stage wrapped in LED screens. Just a blank notebook. And Evelyn Carter's words still echoing inside him like code that refused to be overwritten. She had given him a list. Not a corporate to-do list. A community one. Scrawled in loopy cursive, smudged at the corner, the paper listed items like affordable Wi-Fi in the neighborhood's east side. Funding for after-school STEM programs, but with art, too, don't leave out the dreamers. A fix for the broken street lights on Madison Avenue, kids walk there every morning. Elon looked at the list the way he once looked at rocket schematics. But this wasn't engineering. This was empathy in practice. He returned to the community center the following week. No black SUVs. Just a rental sedan and a hoodie that said SpaceX, wrinkled at the shoulder. This time, he didn't go straight to Evelyn. He went to Mr. Jamal in the tech lab, who ran free computer classes on Thursdays. To Miss Teresa at the front desk, who paid for art supplies from her own paycheck. To Malik, the janitor, who had ideas for solar-powered lighting in the parking lot but had never told anyone because who'd listen to me? Elon did. He took notes. He asked questions. Not like an executive gathering metrics, but like a student who finally realized he'd been skipping class. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no drone shots. No dramatic background scores. Just sweat, sawdust, and real people with real stories. A girl named Alana, age 11, showed him her sketchpad. "I want to design robots," she said shyly, "but like, for people with no hands. My uncle's a vet." Elon stared at her drawing, a bionic hand with fingers made from recycled parts and wires labeled in pink gel pen. He smiled. "Can I borrow this?" he asked. "Only if you promise not to steal it," she grinned. Evelyn watched from a distance. She saw what most missed. Not a billionaire giving back, but a man getting quiet. Learning how not to center himself. It was messy. Awkward at times. But sincere. And that's all she ever asked for. 2 months later, something unexpected happened. The lights on Madison Avenue were fixed. Not by city council, but by a coalition of tech volunteers, led by Malik, with funding quietly funneled through a grant from Project EC. Elon Carter. A Wi-Fi initiative rolled out, covering the east side. No flashy branding. Just routers tucked into churches, clinics, barbershops. And at the community center? A new room opened. Not a lab. Not a museum. But a space named the listening room. No screens. Just chairs, books, journals, and recordings of elders telling their stories. At the entrance, a small plaque read, "The future doesn't begin when we speak. It begins when we finally stop to hear." The media caught wind of it eventually. A reporter cornered Elon outside a grocery store near the center. "Mr. Musk, are you funding these community projects?" Elon paused, plastic grocery bag in hand. "Not funding," he said. Following. The clip went viral. But not for the reason you'd expect. Because in that moment, he looked normal. And America didn't know what to do with a billionaire who wasn't selling anything. Later that week, Evelyn sat with him under the sycamore tree by the playground. The same tree where her late husband used to read poetry on Sundays. "You've changed," she said. Elon didn't respond right away. Just looked at the kids chasing each other in the fading light. "I think I've just started paying attention." "To what?" she asked. He turned toward her, voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "To the fact that I used to build things to escape Earth. But maybe the real challenge is building something worth staying for." Evelyn smiled, not proud, not sentimental. "Just, sure." "Then maybe you're finally becoming an engineer," she said. "An engineer of what?" he asked. Her eyes twinkled. "Of dignity. Of connection. Of what makes life feel like home." That night, Elon opened his notebook again. But this time, instead of drawing rocket parts or circuit designs, he started writing names. Alana. Malik. Mrs. Carter. Because sometimes, the best blueprint for the future isn't a diagram. It's a list of people you refuse to leave behind. It was supposed to be just another tech summit. The kind with LED lights, wireless microphones, and 1,000 suits nodding at every syllable. The keynote speaker? Elon Musk. But something was different this time. He walked onto the stage not with swagger, but with stillness. No PowerPoint. No rehearsed opening joke. Just a plain gray shirt and a pause that made the whole room lean in. "I used to think the future was built with code," he began, "but it turns out, it's built with conversations." The audience waited for more. Instead, he reached into his pocket and unfolded a wrinkled sheet of paper, the one Evelyn Carter had written on months ago. He held it up. "This," he said, "is the most important blueprint I've ever held." The room didn't know what to do with that. Because no one had come to hear about broken street lights and after-school art programs. But Elon didn't care. He was no longer speaking to the boardrooms or the billionaires. He was speaking to the rest of us. Later that week, he received an offer, an urgent request to return to California for a closed-door meeting with world leaders and global CEOs. Something about a partnership deal involving AI ethics and planetary colonization policies. A seat at the world's most powerful table. His team was ecstatic. "Just one trip," they said. "You don't even have to stay the whole summit. Say a few words, shake hands, post a tweet. Then you're back." He nodded. But something felt wrong. That night, he sat under the same tree where he and Evelyn once talked about the kind of future worth staying for. She wasn't there. She was in the hospital, recovering from a minor stroke. He had visited earlier, brought her a small radio and a stack of Toni Morrison audiobooks. She held his hand and whispered, "Don't get distracted by applause, child. Listen for the quiet places. That's where the truth hides." Her fingers had trembled. But her voice had never been steadier. The next morning, Elon canceled the flight. Instead, he spent the day helping local kids in a robotics workshop at the center. One of the boys asked, "Aren't you supposed to be somewhere important today?" Elon smiled, handing over a screwdriver. "I am." The press spun it like a scandal. Elon walks away from global power table. But in the neighborhood, no one cared. Because by now, they knew him. Not as the man who owned Twitter or built spaceships, but as the guy who helped fix the Wi-Fi. The guy who sat on broken benches and asked questions instead of offering answers. The guy who stayed. 2 weeks later, Evelyn returned to the center. Slower now. But still herself. They sat again under the tree, no words at first, just a shared stillness. Finally, she spoke. "So, you turned down the world?" Elon nodded. "It didn't feel like mine anymore." She smiled, placing her hand on his. "Good," she whispered. because now you might just be ready to help build it. Some stories don't end with applause echoing through grand halls or headlines declaring victory. Sometimes they end quietly, with a nod from someone who saw you not for your success, but for your potential before the world gave you a title. Someone who believed you could become more than the version the spotlight carved out for you. That's the kind of recognition that stays. Elon Musk didn't lose his edge or brilliance, he simply learned to direct it inward first. He learned that leadership isn't always about volume, vision, or velocity. Sometimes, it's about pausing long enough to listen. About being fully present, especially when no one expects you to be. It's about showing up when there's no stage, no script, and no cameras rolling. If you've ever felt like your own story is begging for a turning point, maybe this is it. Maybe this is your reminder that you don't need to build a spaceship to change the world. You just need to stay when it's easier to walk away, to listen when pride wants to argue, to act when no one is watching. And if something in this story stirred you, woke up a dream you quietly shelved, or brought back the voice you once silenced, then maybe now is the time to return to it. Not someday. Today. Start small. Start human. And if you're not sure where to begin, here are 2 books that might help light the way. The Second Mountain by David Brooks, a compelling guide to finding purpose beyond success, and The Art of Community by Charles Vogel, a warm, wise manual for creating connection that lasts. Take one small action today that gives nothing back to you, but gives everything to someone else. Call someone. Mentor. Fund something you'll never benefit from. Because the future isn't just something we design, it's something we choose over and over again. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to take off. It's to stay.